Welcome, friends. Welcome to today's session. As you know, we are reading a new art book, Create a Better Life by Eckhart Tolle. And this book is amazing. It is all about how our mindset affects our on daily basis. So please sit in a comfortable posture and your intention needs to be what the author is saying here. Listen the words of author carefully. A new earth. The voice in the head. That first glimpse of awareness came to me when I was a first year student at the University of London. I would take the tube subway twice a week to go to the university library, usually around 9 o'clock in the morning. Toward the end of the rush hour, one time a woman in her early 30s sat opposite me. I had seen her before a few times on that train. One could not help but notice her. Before a few times on the train, one could not help but notice her. Although the train was full, the seats on either side of her were unoccupied, the reason being no doubt that she appeared to be quite insane. She looked extremely tense and talked to herself instantly in a loud and angry voice. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she was totally unaware, it seemed, of other people or her surroundings. Her head was facing downward and slightly to the left, as if she were addressing someone sitting in the empty seat next to her. Although I don't remember the precise content, her monologue went something like this. And then she said to me, so I said to her, you are a liar. How dare you accuse of me when you are the one who has always taken advantage of me? I trusted you and you betrayed my trust. There was the angry tone in her voice of someone who has been wronged, who needs to defend her position lest she become annihilated. As the train approached Tottenham Court Road station, she stood up and walked toward the door, with still no break in the stream of words coming out of her mouth. That was my stop too, so I got off behind her. At street level, she began to walk towards Bedford Square, still engaged in her imaginary dialogue, still angrily accusing and asserting her position. My curiosity aroused, I decided to follow her as long as she was walking in the same general direction I had to go in. Although engrossed in her imaginary dialogue, she seemed to know where she was going. Soon we were within sight of the imposing structure of Senate House, a 1930s high rise, the university's central administrative building and library. I was shocked. Was it possible that we were going to the same place? Yes, that's where she was heading. Was she a teacher, a student, an office worker, a librarian? Maybe she was some psychiatrist's research project. I never knew the answer. I walked 20 steps behind her, and by the time I entered the building, which ironically was the location of the headquarters of the Mind Police, in the film version of George Orwell's novel 1984. She had already been swallowed up by one of the elevators. I was somewhat taken aback by what I had just witnessed. A mature first year student at 25, I saw myself as an intellectual in the making, and I was convinced that all the answers to the dilemmas of human existence could be found through the intellect. That is to say, by thinking. I didn't realize yet that thinking without awareness is the main dilemma of human existence. I looked upon the professor as sages who had all the answers, and upon the university as the temple of knowledge. How could an insane person like her be part of this? I was still thinking about her when I was in the men's room prior to entering the library. As I was washing my hands, I thought, I hope I don't end up like her. The man next to me looked briefly in my direction, and I suddenly was shocked when I realized that I hadn't just thought those words but mumbled them aloud. Oh my god, I'm already like her, I thought. Wasn't my mind as instantly active as her? There were only minor differences between us. The predominant underlying emotion behind her thinking seemed to be anger. In my case, it was mostly anxiety. She thought out loud. I thought mostly in my head. If she was mad, then everyone was mad, including myself. There were differences in degree only. For a moment, I was able to stand back from my own mind and see it from a deeper perspective, as it were. There was a brief shift from thinking to awareness. I was still in the man's room, but alone now, looking at my face in the mirror. At that moment of detachment from my mind, I laughed out loud. It may have sounded insane, but it was the laughter of sanity, the laughter of the big built Buddha. Big built Buddha. Life isn't as serious as my mind makes it out to be. That is what the laughter seemed to be saying. But it was only a glimpse, very quickly to be frozen. At the detachment of at that moment of detachment from my mind, I laughed out loud. It may have sounded insane, but it was the laughter of sanity, the laughter of the big built Buddha. Life isn't serious as mind makes it out to be. That's what the laughter seems to be saying. But it was only a glimpse, very quickly to be forgotten. I would spend the next 3 years in anxiety and depression, completely identifying with my mind. I had to get close to suicide before awareness returned, and then it was much more than a glimpse. I become free of compulsive thinking and of the false mind made I. The above ancient incidents not only gave me a first glimpse of awareness, is also planted the first doubt as to the absolute validity of the human intellect. A few months later, something tragic happened that made my doubt grow. On a Monday morning, we arrived for a lecture to be given by a professor whose mind I admire greatly, only to be told that sadly he had committed suicide sometime during the weekend by shooting himself. I was stunned. He was a highly respected teacher and seems to have all the answers. However, I could as yet see no alternative to the cultivation of thought. I didn't realize yet that thinking is only a tiny aspect of consciousness that we are. Nor did I know anything about the ego, let alone being able to detect it within myself. Content and the structure of ego. The egoic mind is completely conditioned by the past. It is conditioned in its condition is its condition is twofold. It consists of content and structure. In the case of a child who cries a deep suffering because his toy has been taken away, the toy represents content. It is interchangeable with any other content, any other toy, or the object. The content you identify with is conditioned by your environment, your upbringing, and surrounding culture. Whether the child is rich or poor, whether the toy is a piece of wood shaped like an animal or a sophisticated electronic gadget makes no difference as far as the suffering caused by its loss is concerned. The reason why such acute suffering occurs is concealed in the word my. It is structural. The unconscious compulsion to enhance one's identity through association with an object is built into the very structure of the egoic mind. One of the most basic mind structure through which the ego comes into existence is identification. The word identification is derived from the Latin word Adam, meaning same and facere, which means to make. So, when I identify with something, I make it the same. The same as what? The same as I. I endow it with a sense of self, and so it becomes part of my identity. One of the most basic levels of identification is with things. My toy later becomes my car, my house, my clothes, and so on. I try to find myself in things but never quite make it and end up losing myself in them. That is the fate of ego. Identification with things. The people in the advertising industry know very well that in order to sell things that people don't really need, they must convince them that those things will add something to how they see themselves or are seen by others. In other words, add something to their sense of self. They do this, for example, by telling you that you will find out that you will stand out from the crowd by using this product, and so by implication be more fully yourself, or they may create an association in your mind between the product and a famous person or a youthful, attractive, or happy looking person. Even pictures of old or diseased celebrities in their prime work as well for that purpose. The unspoken assumption is that by buying this product through some magical act of appropriation, you become like them, or rather the surface image of them. And so it man So in many cases you are not buying a product but an identity enhancer. Designer labels are primarily collective identities that you buy into. These are expensive and therefore exclusive. If everybody could buy them, they would lose their psychological value, and all you would be left with would be their material value, which likely amounts to a fraction of what you paid. What kind of things you identify with will vary from person to person according to age, gender, income, social class, fashion, the surrounding culture, and so on. What you identify with is all to do with content, whereas the unconscious compulsion to identify is structural. It is one of the most basic ways in which the egoic mind operates. Paradoxically, what keeps the so called consumer society going is the fact that trying to find yourself through things doesn't work. The ego satisfaction is short lived, and so you keep looking for more, keep buying, keep consuming. Of course, in this physical dimension that our surface selves inhabit, things are a necessary and inacceptable part of our lives. Acceptable parts of our lives. We need housing, clothes, furniture, tool, transportation. There may also be things in our lives that we value because of their beauty or inherent quality. We need to horror the world of things, not despite it. Each thing has beginnings, is a temporary form that has its origin within the formless one life, the source of all things, all bodies, all forms. In most ancient culture, people believed that everything, even so-called inanimate objects, had an indwelling spirit, and in this respect they were closer to the truth than we are today. When you live in a world dead-ended by mental abstractions, you don't sense the aliveness of the universe anymore. Most people don't inhabit a living reality, but a conceptual one. But we cannot really horror things if we use them as a means to self enhancement. That is to say, if we try to find ourselves through them, this is exactly what the ego does. Ego identification with things creates attachment to things, obsession with things, which in turn creates our consumer society and economic structures where the only measure of progress is always more. The unchecked striving for more, for endless growth, is a dysfunction and a disease. It is the same dysfunction and the cancerous cell manifests, whose only goal is to multiply itself, unaware that it is bringing about its own destruction by destroying the organism of which it is a part. Some economics are so attached to the notion of growth that they can't let go of that word. So they refer to recession as a time of negative growth. A large part of many people's life is consumed by an obsession, preoccupation with things. This is why one of the ills of our time is object proliferation. When you can no longer feel the life that you are likely to try to fill up your life with things. As a spiritual practice, I suggest that you investigate your relationship with the world of things through self observation and, in particular, things that are designated with the word my. You need to be alert and honest to find out, for example, whether your sense of self worth is bounded up with things you possess. Do certain things induce a subtle feeling of importance or superiority? Does the lack of them make you feel inferior to others who have more than you? Do you casually mention things you owe or show them off to increase your sense of worth in someone else's eyes and through them in your own? Do you feel restful or angry and somehow diminished in your sense of self when someone else has more than you or when you lose a prized possession? The next topic is the lost ring. When I was seeing people as a counselor and spiritual teacher, I would visit a woman twice a week whose body was riddled with cancer. She was a school teacher in her mid 40s and had been given no more than a few months to live by her doctor. Sometimes a few words were spoken during those visits, but mostly we would sit together in silence, and as we did, she had her first glimpse of the stillness within herself that she never knew existed during her busy life as a school teacher. One day, however, I arrived to find her in a state of great distress and anger. What happened? I asked. Her diamond ring of great monetary as well as sentimental value had disappeared, and she said she was sure it has been stolen by the woman who came to look after her for a few hours every day. She said she didn't understand how anybody could be so careless and heartless as to do this to her. She asked me whether she should confront the woman or whether it would be better to call the police immediately. I said I couldn't tell her what to do, but asked her to find out how important a ring or anything else was at this point in her life. You don't understand, she said. This was my grandmother's ring. I used to wear it every day until I got ill and my hand became too swollen. It is more than just a ring to me. How can I not be upset? The quickness of her response and anger and defensiveness in her voice were indications that she had not yet become present enough to look within and to disentangle her reaction for the event and observe them both. Her anger and defensiveness were signs that the ego was still speaking through her. I said, I'm going to ask you a few questions, but instead of answering them now, see if you can find the answer within you. I will pause briefly after each question. When an answer comes, it may not necessarily come in the form of words. She said she was ready to listen. I asked, do you realize that you have to let go of the ring at some point, perhaps quite soon? How much more do you need how much more time do you need before you will be ready to let go of it? Will you become less when you let go of it? Has who you are become diminished by the loss? There were a few minutes of silence after the last question. When she started speaking again, there was a smile on her face and she seemed at peace. The last question made me realize something important. First, I went to my mind for the answer, and my mind said, yes, of course, you have been diminished. Then I asked myself the question again. Has who I am becoming diminished. This time I tried to feel rather than think the answer, and suddenly I could feel my I amness. I have never felt that before. If I feel, if I can feel the I am so strongly, then who I am hasn't been diminished at all. I can still feel it now. Something peaceful but very alive. That is the joy of being. I said you can only feel it when you get out of your head. Being must be felt. It can't be thought. The ego doesn't know about it because thought is what it consists of. The ring was really in your head as a thought that you confuse with the sense of I am. You thought that I am or a part of it was in the ring. Whatever the ego seeks and gets attached to are substitute for the being that it cannot feel. You can value and care for things, but whenever you get attached to them, you will know it is the ego. And you are never really attached to a thing but to a thought that has I, me, or mine in it. Whenever you completely accept a loss, you go beyond ego and who you are. The I am, which is consciousness itself, emerges. She said, now I understand something Jesus said that never made much sense to me before. If someone takes your shirt, let them have your coat as well. That is right, I said. It doesn't mean you should never lock your door. All it means is that sometimes letting things go is an act of far greater power than defending or hanging on. In the last few weeks of her life, as her body became weaker, she became more and more radiant, as if light were shining through her. She gave many of her possessions away, some to the woman she thought had stolen the ring, and with each thing she gave away her joy dependent. When her mother called me to let me know she had passed away, she also mentioned that after her that they found her ring in the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. Did the woman return the ring or had it been there all the time? Nobody will ever know. One thing we do know, life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your or evolution of your consciousness. How do you know this is the experience you need? Because this is the experience you are having at this moment. It is wrong then to be proud of one's possession or to feel resentful toward people who have more than you. Not at all. That sense of pride, of needing to stand out, the apparent enhancement of oneself, though, more than and diminishment through less than is neither right nor wrong. It is the ego. The ego isn't wrong, it is just unconscious. When you observe the ego in yourself, you are beginning to go beyond. Don't take the ego too seriously. When you detect egoic behavior in yourself, smile. At times you may even laugh. How could humanity have been taken in by this for so long? Above all, know that the ego isn't personal. It isn't who you are. If you consider the ego to be the personal problem, that is just more ego. So we covered three parts, but all of these parts were amazing. mm, telling us that how so many things affect us on mental level. The behave Someone's behavior can make me angry. if, and sometimes this happen when we are with lots of people, and then suddenly we see that um, whatever they are saying, it is affecting me on mental, physical and emotional level, and we don't know that time that we have to be aware of our own thoughts, because our subconscious mind is recording every single thing we are hearing, doing, and automatically it repeats itself. Anyone wants to share anything about these topics before we go for meditation?
Actually, it's a very wonderful book, and the chapters you read, it's almost kind of all about ego, right? And especially when we attach with the belongings we have, like toys, since childhood with toys, then later with cars and all those stuff, and how ego grows with that. And additionally, the example with the old lady when she lost the ring, and especially the lines when it was quoted, like someone takes your shirt, then give them the coat also. That's kind of thing stayed in my mind. It's a very wonderful line. And yeah, it's most of that, it's all related to I. We started to attach with the things, and it's a thought. It's just a thought. When it gets attached with the material things, then it brings out the ego more, and we kind of being egoistic. We are not noting what's happening in our mind, and we get egoistic. So it's a kind of a chapter which tells us to watch the egoistic thoughts and detach yourself from the thoughts. It's an amazing read today. Thanks, Monika.
Thank you, Vanity. Thank you very much. Yeah, it is an eye opener. Like so many times, sometimes people praise you, even don't take it like as a praise, because sometimes we go with means a small incident means bring a huge ego in me, right? So always bring that balance back. And author gives so many beautiful example that we are so much into materialistic thing, we are so much attached with the things, that it is very hard for us to detach with the things. And the moment you detach yourself with the things, you see that how everything you were thinking is my, nothing is end of the day yours. There is a saying that even when you born, you born with empty hands. When you left the world, you go with empty hands. So the journey is between these two positions of hands. So how you want to spend your life is completely up to you. So thank you very much, Vaniji. Please sit in a meditative posture. Please cross your legs, clasp your fingers into fingers, and gently close your eyes. And bring your whole attention and awareness towards your breath. Feel the silence within you when you're inhaling and exhaling. Connect with your silence. Silence is when you are completely experiencing peace within yourself, completely relaxed and calm, in harmony with your body, mind, and soul. This silence is full of humbleness, kindness. Is this silence full of question? Or this silence is a complete deep silence? Now, slowly, slowly bring your awareness back to your physical form and open your eyes. Thank you very much for being a part of this session. We'll meet tomorrow again. Deep, deep gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you.